Hi everyone, good afternoon. Just thank you very much, firstly, for taking time out to join us. As most of you, all of you all know, that the Ethnicity Awards, the shortlist was announced last week. So, thank you everyone for actually who submitted, and congratulations to all the individuals and organisations that have been shortlisted. So today's agenda will be successes of ERGs. And I think today we've got, not I don't think, I know today we've got Natwest Group, Tesco's and National Grid. So they've all been shortlisted amongst other people. And Sarah, of course, will go through anything that, or all the questions and get them through the session today. So I don't really have much more to say than that, really. The ethnicity, investment ethnicity agenda itself, what we're working on, I think majority of you know us. So we're just constantly pushing the barriers and getting more and more organisations involved in what we're doing. If you don't know anything about what we're doing, please let me know. I think all of you have got my email addresses. Send me a note and I'll be more than happy to get back to you and fill you in on a one-to-one basis. So I'm just going to hand it back to Sarah. She can take it away.
Thank you, Margaret. And firstly, Margaret's absolutely right. It's not about us, this situation. We're a platform for collaborating and sharing information and best practice from some of the people who have all gone through these things, so other people don't have to reinvent the wheel on it. And this session, we are looking at a lot around how network groups and employee resource groups have coped during like a lot of change and a lot of different factors that have happened this year. With Black Lives Matter movement, obviously there's been a lot of support and a lot of asks that have been happened for a change around network groups. So we're going to be tackling all of that. But what I wanted to do first is just introduce our experts, and I hope you don't mind me saying that, on the panel. And if you could just do a quick introduction of yourself, sort of where you stand, how you sort of support your resource group. Paulette from Tesco's, if you would like to introduce yourself first, that'd be great.
Hi everyone, my name is Paulette and I am the chairperson of BAME at Tesco's. I've been in the role now for about a year and a half or so, just November 2018. So really enjoying it and really just looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say and hopefully adding some value.
Thanks, Paulette. And it'd be really interesting to find out as well how you, because of its sort of branches that you deal with, so how you manage to engage people who are working in satellite sort of places and stuff. That would be really interesting. And then we have Latisha from National Grid.
Hi, yes. So I'm Latisha McKenzie. I'm the chair of the One Employee Resource Group, National Grid's multicultural resource group.
Fantastic. And we have Shamraz from Natwest Group. How's it going there? Quite a lot of work and stuff you've been doing over this past year, but how's it been?
Really, really well. So I am the global co-chair of the Multicultural Network alongside two amazing colleagues, Yinka Fadina and Samuel Okafa. So we look after the global co-chair. But to be honest with you, we don't look after it. We have 40 members in our committee who look after our multicultural network, and they do an amazing job. So the reason why we're here today is because of them. But yeah, absolutely some amazing things going on. So look forward to learning more about what I can take from yourselves and maybe some ideas from the audience that come through as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, just on that note, I just wanted to just reflect quickly and see sort of Latisha, like how have you found this year, like, and everything that's happened, obviously working from home, the changes, working digitally, how's it been from a network group perspective?
It's been intense, I would say, for a number of reasons, but also good. Obviously, given COVID, working virtually and working remotely has had its challenges. The different systems that you're having to use, the weekly quizzes that you're having to join to try and stay engaged with network members, etc. And then also being vulnerable in a lot of these situations because it has prompted a lot of conversation, and you're having to reflect for yourself. You're having to reflect on behalf of the membership and almost articulate that on behalf of the membership as well. and then be a mouthpiece. So it's been intense for a number of reasons.
Yeah, and Paulette, like just from your perspective, have you found the same sort of thing, and how as a network group, you know, have you coped, or with like sort of definitely a lot of change and a lot of pressure around people? Have you found people actively listening at the moment or wanting to understand more? But obviously, how's that affected the network group?
I think it's twofold for myself. So in terms of the pandemic and clearly just being in retail, you know, I think with our guys, the resilience was absolutely fantastic. You know, you just crack on, you just do. And I feel that everybody, you know, even more so, the way that we just all come together, absolutely fantastic. And we just maintain the momentum. You just find that new way. And you realize very quickly, and I realized very quickly, that plans that we had will have to change. And as you know, the colleague just said, the way in which it's operated, you know, innovation became key and new ways of working. So yeah, it was interesting. It's been interesting times. It's been learning curves. It's been exciting and emotional. It's absolutely fantastic. It's really great. But ultimately, it's just brought everybody together even more so. And yeah, I'm just happy for that and grateful. Yeah.
Just generally, have you found that there's been more engagement with because of obviously we all thought network groups, a big part of that is face-to-face sort of contact. So have we found like that moving over to digital, we've increased engagement, or it's changed, or how have we seen like those changes? Shamraz, have you seen it like from that quest? Has it helped globally, or?
You know what, twofold, because actually we were already in the progress of actually working digitally, and we were using Zoom. So a lot of the things that some of our leaders do to not only to save time in terms of traveling, but just to connect, right? Zoom is just absolutely the right thing to do. But it was different because this time we were on Zoom at our homes. And that's different to being on Zoom when you're in an office and you're surrounded by lovely buildings. And so this discomfort of allowing people into your home, to allow people into your private space, you know, to put signs up on the wall telling the kids not to come running in, or the husband to not shout saying, "Where's my breakfast?" You know, all those kind of things and all of those fears that came out. And do you know what? And at first I was one of them as well, right here, because then normally you'd have the kids at school, so you don't need to worry about breakfast or getting them ready. So you've got the kids at home, you've got the husband at home, you've got everybody at home, right here, that you wouldn't normally have to deal with. I go into the office and I leave them behind.
I love the way you bring the husband and the kids into the same. Yeah. I've got the husband, I've got the kids.
It's just too much to deal with, isn't it? And so the fact that we all knew we were in the same situation. We all knew that, do you know what? Together we had to do this. And over the coming months, we've allowed people in our private homes. We've allowed people to get comfortable. I now go on calls where I've got mums and dads with kids on their laps. And I'm like, how beautiful is that we can absolutely be ourselves and not be afraid of where we are and the environment. And do you know what? When you think about how that helps us to bloom and blossom as an organization and to be ourselves. Do you know what? I was scared 6 months ago, like many people out there. But today I sit there and go, I would never go back to how we worked before. And the normal is just not normal anymore. There is a new normal and we're all adapting to it.
And Latisha and Paulette, have you seen any sort of advantages, or what have you seen the changes at the moment, and how as a network group you've had to adapt, or how your network groups adapted the demand over the past 6 months? Latisha?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we're a global company, so we work across both the UK and the US, and we have separate employee resource groups over in the US. So for us, it was a perfect opportunity for really for us to really interact with the US employee resource groups over there. So we've held an open discussion on race where we're talking about it from a US perspective and a UK perspective. We're getting everyone more involved in the conversation, allowing colleagues to really bridge that gap between the two continents, which has been fantastic for us. It's meant that as an ERG, we've grown in our membership. And it's really just encouraged the conversation to not happen, you know, just on a membership basis or a departmental. It's gone global within the company, so we're having those conversations further.
That sounds great. Like, and Paulette, like, you know, from a Tesco's point of view, how has it actually helped, especially sort of engaging people? Or do you think there's different ways that, you know, different people have been engaged with it over the last 6 months? What have you found?
Well, to be fair, I think because of the size of the organisation, to a certain extent, you're there already and you have that reach, you know, so it is around picking up the phone. And I think, as the colleague just rightly said, it was just more around you're doing it even more so. So we use Teams, you know, we're not a Zoom, but we do use Teams. And we were just getting used to that. So it's just really interesting. It's like everything happened in a timely manner and fashion. And I think even more so, I guess it was just around having that respect for others within their roles, because actually the demand and the emphasis that then went on to individuals, if you were a part of a network and especially leading a network, you're doing two bits. You're not only doing a day job, you're also leading a network. And when you came into a pandemic, you know, your call was elsewhere, but everyone understood that. And, you know, but the momentum kept going. So whereas I know personally, I was like, oh no, you know, what's going to happen now? Actually, nothing. We were still able, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, but we were still able to recognize and celebrate, you know, different cultural dates. We still are. We're in Black History Month at the moment. And actually, it was more my mindset. So I think I'll bring my mum into this one, but, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. And it definitely is that. And I think everybody definitely just has been striving to do their best and just really stepping up to the mark. But the funny thing is that we thought we were there already, but even more so, we proved we were there again.
And just to your point, which is a great point, it is Black History Month, and it is also a time for celebrating at the moment. And what we want to hear from you on the chat as well is, like, have there been any successes that you can share as well, like out there, anything that you've found, that any changes or anything you've noticed, or any tips as well that you can give other people who have network groups, and we'll read them out. But like, just out of interest as well, like moving over to a sort of digital format, I know you're saying that, what advice would you give other network groups about how they can be successful in like what they're doing now that's different to before? Because a lot of network groups did rely on sort of face-to-face areas as well. And I know it'd be quite good to hear sort of what, you know, the objectives of your network group are, or employee resource group, and how you've sort of executed that during this time. Shamraz, if you want to go ahead.
Yep. So I guess I felt we've done, I mean, in the last 12 months, right, we did 200 events, and we were able to do them, you know, all over the country. So the Multicultural Network is not just based in England, we're over in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Poland, India as well. So with colleagues all over the group, this has brought us together. So Zoom has allowed us to be in one space at one time together. And sometimes when you are part of a office, or you're part of a team that is in a certain part of the country, you may not be able to connect with as many people that look like you, or you can connect with, because you don't have that many cultural or Black, Asian and minority ethnic colleagues in that space. You might be one of three or whatever have you. So I guess using Zoom has just helped us to really connect with each other. And actually what's really been brought to life is the diversity across our organization, because it doesn't matter whether you're in London, whether you're in India, whether you're in Scotland, we can all come together and we can see each other. And normally we don't get the opportunity to do that. So for me, I'd say Zoom, and we've also got an internal version of Facebook as well, where we connect with, where we chat to each other. We've got Teams, which we've just launched as well. But for me, I think Zoom has really helped us just to connect and to help us to really bring to the forefront the beauty of what diversity is. Because now I see more people that look like me. I can connect with more people that look like me, and I can have more cultural conversations. And that's feedback that we've had from all of our colleagues. So Zoom for us has been beautiful.
Yeah, we've heard similar from other resource groups as well, that they're seeing people engaged that wouldn't normally necessarily have engaged in face-to-face events, which is really great to hear. But also I wanted to ask around, because obviously all the stuff around the Black Lives Matter movement, it seems like almost a big appetite at the moment for people to understand more. What sort of advice, like Paulette, to start off with, what sort of advice would you give people within the network group? How can we really captivate that audience to sort of give the best, you know, get the best outcomes around all of this stuff and make it more of a longer journey rather than, oh, it's Black History Month, let's just dump a load of events in there and get that done?
Well, so two parts. So in regards to the Black Lives Matter and actually any cultural date, because yeah, we've celebrated Windrush and Eid Adha. We've got, you know, Vaisakhi next year. So actually, it's about listening to the colleagues, and it's as simple as that. Listen to the colleagues. Get as much listening, you know, focus groups, whatever you want to call it, however you want to phrase it. But that's where it is, because actually, what you can do is you have one path in mind, and you can speak to your leadership team and think that's the right way to go. But if you're not engaging and speaking and listening to your workforce and your peers, then you might be in the wrong direction. And that's, you know, then we won't be, you know, engaging colleagues how we think that we are engaging them. So I think first and foremost, it is around that active listening.
Fantastic. And Latisha, what sort of examples of things have you done sort of over this period, just based on all the change? Just give us some sort of real examples, put you on the spot.
So that there's been quite a few things. So obviously, as we've mentioned, it's prompted a lot of appetite for conversation. A lot of people who were not necessarily from an ethnic minority wanting to really understand how and why we're in this situation. And, you know, we don't have the answers, but we can only answer from our own perspective. So that was the first thing, to try and almost jump that hurdle of, okay, we have some answers, but being open to that conversation and really creating that safe space and safe forum. So we actually ran an open discussion on race, where we had individuals from director levels right down to admin levels, staff in between, middle management, who were able to ask the questions, answer questions. You know, there was no silly question, but really an open forum just to really spark that dialogue and create that environment where people felt comfortable to ask those questions that they've probably never felt comfortable enough to ask them, to help with that situation there.
Yeah, no, that's really useful. Margaret, we've got some message on the chat, which we're going to get Margaret to just...
I think at the moment there's not that many minutes. There's lots of conversations, but it's about the volume. But I've got a few questions. So I know that your networks seem to get in sort of bigger and more active, but how are you finding the senior leaders, managers, sponsors? Are they getting involved in what you're doing? Are they pushing the agenda?
How can you better engage those? What tips would you give as well? Shamraz, do you want to answer that first? And then
So I guess we're in a beautiful space where we have one of the first female CEOs, so Alison Rose, and actually she takes an active role in supporting all the ELNs. So she personally sponsors all the ELNs across the organisation, and then across the organisation, each one of each one of her executive directs then sponsors a network. So when we look at commitment, actually to have the CEO committed to this and to have an executive direct committed to each of the ELNs is definitely something that, you know what, really helps you to have that conversation, but also it just shows the dedication and commitment you have of your organization. Because we've got to remember, we are an employee-led network. It's where, you know, the voice of the people, we're employees, and they don't have to, but to have that executive support, I think is number one, absolutely fantastic. So we're actually supported by Simon McNamara, who's the group CEO. So again, with their support, with our sponsor support, it just helps us to really make sure that everything that we do, our executive committee and our CEO supports us with. The events that we have, the events that we plan, we absolutely try and make sure that we get first picks at the diary. So we'll make sure that we're joint up in our approach. And you know what? I don't think we've had an event so far where we haven't had somebody of seniority in our organization attend our events. So to have that presence just goes to show that actually without that presence, you can't drive change, but to have that support, and just very quickly, because I know we touched on Black Lives Matter as well, and off the back of the Black Lives Matter and everything that happened, actually we created conversation within our group, and Alison appointed all 3 global co-chairs of the Multicultural Network to lead a Black, Asian and minority ethnic task force, to learn more about some of those lived experiences, and to think about what it is that we want to do as a group to help overcome some of those barriers and to help reduce some of those racial inequalities that we experience. So for me, when you've got a CEO and an executive committee that is taking fundamental responsibility to helping drive change, it's got to be something that you have to drive, because without it, you can't move forward.
And Latisha, how do you know, obviously your networks are quite mature now, so you've been going for a while, but how do we get to this? How, you know, what tips would you give around getting to this point where we've got sort of senior buy-in and, you know, we can see the network really becoming instrumental in sort of influencing business?
Yeah, so similar to Shamraz, all of the employee resource groups within National Grid are sponsored by a director of the business. So we have that regular engagement in terms of what our aims and objectives are. And then we work quite closely with HR as well when they're developing policies, training. You know, there's always a two-way conversation, so we can always give our input as well. What we've seen as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement and the incident is that there has been a greater engagement with really senior leaders within the business. So the CEO taking it to the board across here in the UK and the US. And, you know, they're really, really asking of us to speak on behalf of the membership in terms of the next steps for the organisation, not just in terms of events, but looking at creating an area within the business where these conversations are not tokens. They're not a one-off when we have, you know, events or initiatives, or, you know, we're celebrating something. They become a regular conversation across all areas of the business, in the same way that, you know, we take health and safety very seriously, and, you know, it's first thing on agenda items in every meeting that we have. Diversity and inclusion should be of equal importance and make it standard practice that we are continuing that conversation there. And it's really just about perseverance. You know, you have to carry the conversation on. Some people are going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be new to a lot of people, but you have to cross that barrier when to be able to break it down.
Fantastic. The next part of this, I do want people to ask questions as well. So if you can think of any questions, you must be all responsible for, in some ways, for your own resource group. So if you have any questions, no matter how tough, this is the time to ask.
Question. So sorry, there is a question. So someone said they liked Shamraz's comment about the Zoom enabling more people to get involved. So the question is, would the panelists want to see this widened to strengthen connections permanently?
Yeah, and
also strengthen the voice of ERGs. So
you know what?
how do we see the future of our ERGs, like when we maybe go back to a semi-new normal, whatever it turns out to be?
Do you know what I do find, right, with Zoom, don't you find that we've got more time on our, because we're saving the time in traveling, we've got more time to make some of these meetings, but most importantly, right, because of the pandemic and because of how we are locked down at home, you want to connect more as well. You want to learn more. You just generally want to find out a little bit more about people. So I guess for me personally, definitely would love to do a little bit more Zoom, but nothing beats the personal interaction. So whilst I love Zoom, I think it's great. I can't wait for us to start being able to do some events where we just connect with each other again. But again, if it wasn't for Zoom, right, we wouldn't be here today and we wouldn't be connecting with each other and having this coffee chat. So I'm here for Zoom to stay.
And Paulette, how do you see the future of, do you see it? Do you think the objectives have changed very much? And do you see the future changing in, obviously this is a new format or a hybrid sort of thing?
Yeah, honestly, I think everyone's really embraced it, and you're right about bringing those, everyone just closer together. So just coincidentally, earlier on today, when I held a call with our CEO and director sponsor, we had somebody from Northern Ireland. We had a colleague from Wales. So it does, bring people together. So I don't think it's something that will go away. I feel that it's something that's here to stay, and it's about incorporating it with those face-to-face. So to me, I feel like it will be a two-part. If we do get back to, a place where we'll have the events more so face-to-face, we will definitely be trying to incorporate being live as well via Teams or Zoom, as you guys have. I think it's here to stay, definitely.
And would you echo that, Latisha?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's nice that you have the option of that flexibility, and because you're almost forced to be at home and work at home. For us, especially with the engineers, because we're based all over the UK, and you often get a lot of individuals traveling from one location to the next. That's where, when we have in-person events, that's where we kind of, the numbers might dwindle, or the commitment to attend events dwindles. But for us, it's been fantastic. As I mentioned, we've been able to partner with the US side of the business and just really engage more with membership, simply because there is that flexibility around dialing in.
Fantastic. And Margaret, I think we've got another question. So
yes, someone said that they have recently launched their Black History Month events, and whilst there are some positive feedback, there are some positive feedback. For example, some colleagues thought that Black historic figures was patronising and suggested that Black people were not capable. Another colleague thought that the quest for Black colleagues to share more about their cultural heritage for Black History Month was offensive and should have been extended to all colleagues. How do you handle challenges like this?
That's a great question. Who would like to take that?
I'll kick off. So I'm a glass half full woman, right? Everything's an opportunity, and that's somebody that we just haven't had the opportunity to connect with, right? So somebody who just doesn't know. Nobody wakes up to get up in the morning to offend somebody. It's because they don't know. They've not had the beautiful experience of connecting with diverse people. So for me, I would embrace that person, and I would help them to understand and to help them to learn. Because when we can learn a little bit more about each other, we wouldn't even be asking stuff like that.
It's true. And we're all on this journey, aren't we? Where nobody's
absolutely.
It's about not being scared to get things wrong as well. And it's better people vocalizing stuff, so we can look at how we can do stuff in the best way to work together.
And if someone's asking you a question, that's a great thing, because they're curious and they want to know. So you've just always got to think, every single question, no matter how uncomfortable it is, it's because they're curious. You have got to nurture that curiosity.
I'm quite interested how much, because there's a lot around allies and around how we tackle, like, obviously the lid's been blown up of the fact that there is some different forms of different degrees of racism within the workplace. I'm just interested to know how network groups are sort of working with the organisation and the wider strategy to sort of tackle this. So it's just situations like that. So you mentioned listening sessions. Is there any sort of network groups quite involved in sort of doing something to sort of help the organisation tackle that a bit more? Latisha or Paulette?
For us, yeah. So for us, we actually, I think it was about a month and a bit ago, we ran an allyship event, and this was really to help explain what an ally actually is, because there's a number of people who hadn't fully grasped what an ally was, and then try and help those individuals who had the potential of being allies and wanted to be an ally, how really help them along the journey of how they can help and what they can do, whether it's, you know, just having a conversation with their teams, you know, whether it's, you know, volunteering at an event, or going to use their position of power if they're in management, so to speak, to engage further with senior leaders in the business. It's just around carrying the conversation on a bit more, and really using almost everyone in the business to normalize the situation.
Okay, you're on silent, Sarah. She's put a...
I think you're on mute, Sarah.
Yeah. Another, well, it's not necessarily a question, but somebody says, what can ERGs do when they are not seen as, wait a minute, what can ERGs do when they are seen as not doing enough by the rest of the firm? It sometimes feels like BAME employers don't see eye to eye with ERG groups.
So sometimes it's BAME employees and how you engage them, because sometimes you're supposed to be the voice. So how do you make sure that you can like reflect that? So Paulette, like, it'd be good to hear from you on this question.
I think it's twofold, to be fair. So actually, when I think about the D&I team and what we do, it's coming from the colleagues and listening. It goes back to that listening. But then we have things like, you know, you guys do the matrix. There's also, you know, the Race at Work Charter, etc. So there's all these tools that are there to help and support. And it's about having those conversations to say, okay, this is what we're here. This is what we're here to do. This is what the recommendations are, you know, as a company, and what good would look like. And try and understand what is your barrier and what is stopping you from trying to meet these objectives. And it's working in partnership. And for those that have that CEO and those director sponsors, because again, I'm just quite fortunate. I've got Jason Tarry, Johnny McCurry is our director sponsor. You know, again, it's like they're the key holders. So if you haven't got those, you know, key members and the leadership team on your side, or that engagement, then yes, it does feel like an uphill struggle. But when you've got the D&I team, when you've got your CEO, your director sponsors, whatever levels it are, and you're all singing from that same hymn sheet, it is a beautiful song and tune. So it's about, if there's any challenges, just go back and say, okay, let's have a stop moment and let's have a conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, for the last bit of this last 10 minutes, do keep the questions coming, like anything practical and tips. But I just wanted to, because there's different people on this call that are like at different parts of that journey. So it's just like, what sort of tips would you give us, like creating a successful network group or successful ERG? What are the objectives? So it's quite a lot there. But if I go to Latisha first, like, you know, how did you, I don't know if you've been there since the creation, but how did you set up, or what would you say were the things that make your network group successful?
So I wasn't there at the initial conception, shall I say, of the ERG, but I was a member first for the first 3 years of me joining the business, and then became chair last year, July. In terms of the successes, it's really just listening to your membership. Obviously, it's largely volunteer based, the committee is largely voluntary based, and that's something that tends to go unappreciated a lot of the time. I think, especially now with the Black Lives Matter movement, we are the mouthpiece. A lot of people are looking to members of BAME groups to be the mouthpiece, to be the spokesperson, to be the person who is explaining. And sometimes that can go unnoticed, that it's a vulnerable situation for individuals to be in, to almost give a lot of themselves to it. In terms of the success of employee resource groups, is yes, it's really just listening and taking the steer from the membership, really driving that passion and staying motivated. And it's really just about perseverance, because you are, like like Paulette said, you are going to face a lot of uphill battles, and that's in every aspect of conversations, whether it be policies being driven up, supporting award ceremonies, just engaging with different people. There's going to be quite a number of uphill struggles that you go with, but you just have to persevere. You have to, be bold in what the belief is of the group and what you're setting out to achieve, and just continue and push with it.
Fantastic. And it's quite an interesting question on the Q&A. We've got, what advice do our speakers have for young women of colour starting their first job in the business world? But also, it's what's quite interesting, because we're all female panel, but it's quite nuances around, especially around multicultural networks, looking at identity and looking at intersectionality, but also splitting down how we accommodate, like, the whole Black, Asian, minority ethnic, the nuances and the different microaggressions, the different ways we support those colleagues and understand that. I just wondered if there's anything as a network group you've done around like the intersectionality piece, or even looking at identities through different cultures and that side. So Shamraz, like, you're nodding, so I'm coming to you. That's your fault for nodding.
So I guess for me, right, multicultural network, that's what we're called. And people have this concept that it must only be for Black, Asian or minority ethnic people, and that's it. And our multicultural network is definitely not that. Just the concept of multiculturalism is what we should be driving. And over the last 12 months, we've grown from 460 members to over 5,000 colleagues across the organisation. It's made up of BAME and non-BAME people. So it's accessible for every single person. And we've also got our faith strands in there as well. So we've got our Sikh network, our Muslim network, our Hindu network, our Jewish network, our Christian network, our legal network. We've just brought in a few other networks as well. So for me, it's that it's got to be a place where anyone and everyone can come to. It's not just for Black, Asian and minority ethnic people. That, it's, if you want to create a culture where we learn more about each other, then it's got to be a place for everyone. So I guess, yeah, absolutely. So for me, my biggest thing would be, it's got to be a network that connects with everyone. You give learning opportunities for people to learn more about each other, whilst also celebrating. Just because I'm Muslim doesn't mean that I'm the only person who's going to celebrate Eid. I want everyone to celebrate Eid and learn about it. And Diwali as well. It's not part of my faith, but I celebrate Diwali. So I think it's those things that, you know what, the more we can do to connect and celebrate with each other and learn about our heritage and our culture, that's what we want to be.
Because when we talk about allies, we've all got a responsibility, whatever our ethnic background, to understand our colleagues better, so we can sort of understand and empathize with backgrounds. But just because we've only got sort of about 5 minutes to the end of this session, there's some more questions, and I'm loving how active everyone's being. So if we can just, it'd be quite good to just answer quite quick answers around this, and do keep the questions coming, because this is your chance. So there's a question around, do you have paid resources in the ERG? Are you 100% volunteer run? Because at the moment, there's a lot of people doing a lot of work on the side of their desk. It'd be quite good just to hear quickly from each of you around that. So Latisha, if I start with you.
So we are 100% volunteer run. Obviously, we're funded by the organisation to run the events, but very much in addition to the day job.
Do you get time off though? Anyone like allocated or recognition for that, or maybe somebody you can answer this?
Not yet, but maybe as a result of this call.
I think there should be, some allocation of like, this is, you're actually a resource group for the business. So Paulette, how does it work at Tesco's, just out of interest?
do you know, technically, we could take the time back. But I feel that because, and the same, no one is paid, and you do it, you know, in addition when we have events or, you know, anything like that. But it's the passion that people have, and it's the joy and the satisfaction that people get from doing something that, although we know we can get the time back, we just crack on, to be fair.
Are you just saying that because you're on this call? Because I'm realising how overworked they are and how everyone keeps coming to them for stuff. But Shamraz, like you, is it quite similar at Natwest Group, or you know, definitely we recommend that people at least recognise the work that's being done, but it's, you know, there's a burnout sort of the network group chairs and committees as well.
100%. So two very quick answers. We get intensive support from our inclusion D&I team in HR, and we have an allocated budget every single year, and it's and it's healthy. And the other thing is, when it comes to, it's all voluntary work, but every single person that we bring into any of our committees or any of our network groups, especially in the multicultural network, we make sure to have a conversation with the line manager. The goals and the objectives are in their A&D. They're recognised for it, and most importantly, they're given the time to do what it is that they are passionate about. So every single person in our organisation gets time for personal development. And if you want to spend your personal development time nurturing your career, nurturing your own learning and your abilities through working with the multicultural network, that's what we drive. And you know what? Today, I haven't had one person who's come back and said, I haven't had the time, because we set it out at the outset and everyone's on board with the journey. So if you don't already get agreement from line managers to make the time and put it on personal development plans and agree some core goals and objectives, definitely a top tip to do.
Great. And we've got more of a statement at National Grid. One way we've been embracing the full spectrum of diversity and inclusion is via allyship. I just wanted to, there's a couple of other questions, but I just wanted to touch on, like, just regarding allyship, and I know you've all mentioned it. Is this have you found your membership and engagement has been different post George Floyd? And do you think that, you know, what tips would you give on how we actually engage with allies in a productive way?
So for us, we've really worked with HR to make resources and training easily accessible for all colleagues. Obviously, we recognise that not everyone, not every member, not every employee can attend one of our network group events. So we've developed e-learning trainings, whether it be unconscious bias, whether it be microaggressions in the workplace, for people to take the time, if they've got it in their diaries, to really pursue avenues that they probably wouldn't have considered in the past. And it's just allowing them that accountability and responsibility to really drive it in their own hands. If they want to continue the conversation or have a discussion with their line manager afterwards, the opportunity is now there, something that, you know, was not previously there beforehand.
And just time for one more question. So there's a question around comms and, like, how do you handle, because the comms is quite an important part, how we get it out company-wide. How do you actually get more leverage with the comms teams? Do you manage it in the network group, or the question is, do you manage it within the network group, or how do you sort of get sort of comms to sort of engage with what you're doing so they can send it out throughout the company? Anyone got an answer to this one?
Appoint a global communications lead is what we've done in the multicultural network. So I've got a wonderful lady called Margie, right, who works with all the co-chairs within the committee. We produce our own comms, and we've got our own branding. And actually, the workspace group that we've created, we share so much within it. Everyone just lifts and shares that. But definitely partner with communications and the marketing teams, because it's great to look and feel like you can connect within a group, but your organization needs to be able to look and feel like you can connect internally and externally as well. And that's something that we're working really closely on as well.
That's a really good point. And I'm thinking anything you want to do as a network group, it's about engaging the stakeholders of whoever, or like those influencers who can actually make some change within the business. Before we go, I wanted to get like 3 quick tips that you would send out as a part of your resource group. 3 tips for success that you would send out during this period. Latisha, if we start with you, you'll probably steal everyone else.
So 3 things. I would say bring passion into everything that you're doing, perseverance as well, and just really being optimistic. You have to be optimistic in everything that you set to achieve with employee resource groups.
And Paulette, from a Tesco perspective, what would you say keys to success?
I think number 1, communication is key. So just keep that communication. I think resilience and not being afraid to reach out and asking for help, or even just feedback, it's okay, you know, and then you just recognize that you're not alone, and just having that time for reflection as well, because, you know, nothing ain't gonna be, you know, right the first time. You might not get it right the first time, and it's okay. So have time to reflect. And as someone said, think of your own personal well-being. You've got to think of yourself as well. So just take a moment.
That's great advice. And Shamraz.
So my top 3, right? My top 3 would be, you've got to use your network as a platform for other people, because this is your opportunity to help somebody else find their opportunity. So for me, that engagement, absolutely important, so that people who are what both Paulette and Latisha have talked about, this passion. People are passionate about this. They want to help. Give them the platform. And the second thing would be absolutely connect with your stakeholders. You've got to have a really strong relationship with your inclusion teams, with your HR teams, because this just can't be something that you do within a network. This has got to be something that we do throughout the organization. And then the last thing I would probably say is enjoy it. You've got to enjoy it. It's got to be a place where people come to and have fun, because do you know what? We spend like 8-9 hours a day talking about work. And if people can't alleviate some of that stress when they come in, connect with a network, then we've got to ask why we're there. So don't forget to have fun, because we're fun when we're comfortable, and we have fun when we can bring out whole selves to work. So be yourself and have fun.
Is there time to just quickly, you've all been shortlisted. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, congratulations.
Very happy, very excited.
Right.
Yeah, obviously, if you do have any questions about resource groups, network groups, ask these guys, they know what they're doing. Sorry we couldn't answer more questions during this time, but thank you so much to our speakers for today, sparing the time, especially because I know everyone's really super busy with Black History Month, but well done you guys.
Yeah,
and
thank you everyone.
Yeah, and anything else, do get in contact with us. Thank you very much, and tune in next week. Every Thursday, 4 till 5, we've got a different session on. Thank you and bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.